morning, everybody. My name is Vince GASTGEB. I'm with the Allegheny County Airport Authority. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming you here today and thanking you for your partnership. Now, we're really excited that you're here today. We have a great program. We have great speakers to my left you're going to hear from, and then afterwards a Q&A, so get those questions ready. So, as an airport, we really are a reflection of our community. It's about partnerships. It's about people in the room. And you're going to hear that today, but I want to make sure that you understand how important your partnership is with us on so many levels. And again, we have so many great things to go over, and I hope that you have some questions you'll be able to put out to our distinguished panel a little bit later on. So part of the partnerships that we have come in many forms. I have the great pleasure of dealing with a lot of the elected officials in our community, and I do want to recognize the elected officials that are here today or their staffs. From the federal delegation, from the office of U.S. Senator Bob Casey, we have Jim Ferrucci. Jim, thank you for being here today. From the U.S. House of Representatives, we have Congressman-elect Connor Lamb. Connor, thank you. Thank you both for being here from our federal delegation. We appreciate your partnerships. From our state delegation, from the office of Governor Tom Wolf, we have Aaron Mulchaney. From the legislature, we have State Representative Austin Davis. We have State Representative Anita Kulik. We have State Representative Harry Reedshaw. From the office of State Rep Dom Costa, Paulie Grimpy. From the office of State Rep Dan Franco, we have Erica Fricke. And from the office of State Rep Bill Quartz, we have Jennifer Halazinski. Again, we work very closely with our state officials. We thank you again for being here and all your support. From our county delegation, my old stomping grounds on Allegheny County Council, we have Councilwoman Sue Means. And a couple other council members were coming later. We appreciate their support as well. It's very important that we have the local level of representation. So thank you really all for being here. So there's one elected official I haven't recognized yet, but I get a chance to do an introduction because we're longtime colleagues. But Rich Fitzgerald is somebody who years ago was passionate about our community and actually passionate about the airport. He's someone that understands partnerships. He's someone that understands vision as he appoints the board and strategy and tasks. It could be across the county. It could be around the world, which he's been helpful on. It really doesn't matter. Rich Fitzgerald cares about the airport deeply. He understands the issues, not superficially, but understands the issues. And he's very caring of not just the region, but how we look on a national scope. So we're very proud to have him as one of our top partners, and very glad he's here today to be one of our speakers, our County Executive, Rich Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Vince. And Vince, he emphasized the one word that I think really exemplifies what we've become, and it is a partnership of all of us working together. I know, in my 7th year now as county executive, the very first thing folks came up to me as I was taking office was, what are you going to do about the airport? What are you going to do about the airport? When are we going to get those flights back? It's hard to really imagine knowing where the airport is now and what CHRISTINA and her team have done, but I'm going to just take you back in history just a little bit about an airport that when we lost the hub, and we know how devastating that was back in 2004, 2005, and really the airport was in such dire straits that I don't know that it would have survived in any kind of form. We weren't able to pay the bills, quite frankly. The bonds were basically ready to be defaulted on. The state had come in, I see our state delegation, they had come in with some gaming money and helped us pay some of the debt, but even that was not enough. We knew we needed new leadership. We went out for a national search, and guess who applied for the job? Just about nobody. Nobody wanted the job at the Pittsburgh International Airport. So we had an airport that was ready to go bankrupt, and nobody wanted the job. So one of the things we did, we had an asset that was really pretty important under our feet called Marcellus Shale. And we went out and decided to lease that land, those 8,800 acres that we own at the Pittsburgh International Airport, to try to bring revenues in to make it work. And, you know, you would think it would be a no-brainer because we're going to get $500 million or whatever it's going to be. But I can tell you the night that County Council voted that, it passed by one vote. There was so much opposition sometimes to that industry that the council didn't even want to do that. But we did it. We got it through. We got a $50 million bonus payment, and we're getting, you know, hopefully about $20 million a year over the next 20 to 30 years to help stabilize the finances of the airport. Well, then we went out for a national search, and there were a lot of people that were interested in the job at that point, and a lot of good people that were interested in that job. We hired the best person I think we could have found in CHRISTINA CASSOTIS, and 3.5 years ago, she took the helm, and it has been an upward trajectory ever since. We have seen our cities go from 37 cities you could get to directly to now up to 74 you could get directly. We had 7 or 8 airlines. We now have 17 airlines, and you're going to hear from Alaska, one of the newest partners. We have Alaska Airlines, one of the biggest and fastest growing airlines in the country right now. But we're attracting more airlines. For the 4th year in a row, we've lowered the cost to the airlines, and I'm sure David will be happy about that, and trending again for the 5th year. We're at $11.30 per in-plane passengers, the lowest it has been in the post-hub era, and continues to go down. Revenues are up across the board, and not just the gas revenues at the airport, and not just at the Martini Bar, which we appreciate all you guys who stop at that wonderful, wonderful location to meet your loved ones. But the non-aviation revenues are up over 6% this year, up over 1 million passengers in the last couple of years, and up over 11% even over a great year last year. We continue to head in the positive direction. An innovative airline named WOW picked Pittsburgh as one of the first places outside of the major markets that they were going to fly their direct flight to Reykjavik. And of course, the Delta flight that we've had has continued to expand. And then Condor Air picked Pittsburgh again for a Frankfurt flight, one of the only mid-sized cities to get that flight, and they've decided to double their capacity on that because it's been so successful. So not only are we adding flights and adding capacity, but we're doubling and adding success. Well, what does that mean to the people of Pittsburgh? Well, what that means is the companies in Pittsburgh can grow. Because one of the things that had happened was as Pittsburgh was growing with all the great technology and robotics and Uber. I see Sherry here today from that great company. But our airport wasn't keeping up with the way Pittsburgh was transforming itself. That's no longer the case. We're, again, all working together, and the growth is occurring across the board. Our leisure folks can get to where they are. And then last year we announced Qatar is going to be doing cargo and freight, and Christina's going to talk more about that. So all these exciting things are just, it's a tremendous success story that Christina and the team at the Airport Authority deserves an awful lot of credit and an awful lot of praise for what they're doing. I also want to acknowledge a couple board members are here today. Bob Hurley, who also is the Economic Development Director, is on the board, and Matt Smith, from the President of the Pittsburgh Chamber of Commerce, showing the connection, obviously, around economic development and growth. And the fact is, we announced last year we're going to do $1 billion expansion. Not expansion, but a right sizing, I guess, is probably the best way, and bringing it up to the right work with what our market is doing. So this is something we can all be proud of. But the partnership with the business community, our trade unions, I saw Tommy McIntyre here today from the IBEW, that partnership with our building trades and our unions out there has also been a tremendous success and a model for how the rest of the country can operate. So we got a great story to tell. We have a lot of good partnerships that are here. I want to bring Christina up. And again, I cannot say enough in the 3.5 years what Christina CASSOTIS has been able to do. We're glad to see her here today because she is literally traveling all over the world, all over the country, selling Pittsburgh on why it's a great place to locate. And she works so hard in doing that, bringing these European flights, bringing the international flights, bringing the domestic flights, the low-cost carriers to the majors across the board. So let me bring up our great leader, Christina CASSOTIS.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say I'm so proud of Rich FITZGERALD because he knows more about this airport now and more about the industry than he did when I first met him, and he gets it right. So well done, and thank you. Thank you to everyone here. I know I speak for the team when I tell you how honored we are to have such an impressive turnout. And to Rich for his leadership and support that enables the board and me and the entire team to transform these airports. I want to say thank you. You're going to hear about what we're doing in the next few minutes. Some of it's going to be a recap, a little bit of an expansion on what Rich talked about, and a preview of what our guest David Oppenheim from Alaska Airlines is going to talk about. So let me start by saying that for the past 2 years, I have stood at a podium similar to this and given a pretty thorough rundown of our accomplishments achieved by the team at Pittsburgh International and at County Airport. And if that's why you've come today, don't worry, we'll cover it. But first, I have a favor that I'd like to ask. And that is that I need you to think bigger. I need you to think beyond the state of the airport. And I need you to believe that our achievements, impressive as they have been, and they have been, but they're really about something more. The story of the airports and the people who make them great is just getting off the ground, if you'll pardon the pun. We have grander designs before us, certainly, with the master plan and the modernization of Pittsburgh International, but also a new master plan for County Airport. And what's bigger, the big part, is that this really translates into a vibrant, stronger region that is more accessible. You heard Rich talk about that. It matters that our airports are reflective of the renaissance of the region. It matters that we're tech forward. It matters that we're representative of the great diversity of our community. Our airports are the beginning and the end of the brand for this region. For every business traveler that comes in and says, I wonder if I should relocate my company here. For a family coming in for a college visit. For conference planners and attendees, and for families or folks coming in for the weekend, many just for the first time. How we represent the airport matters. How we represent as an airport this region matters to the region and its future and its ability to maximize this region's potential. The airports that Pittsburgh deserves today are reflective of this region. They're right-sized correctly for our airlines and passengers, and they're flexible enough to adapt to the needs of evolutions that are coming in technology. So the essence of the story that I want to share with you today is that our successful transformation as a region and as an organization has allowed us the opportunity to transform the facilities themselves. The new terminal at Pittsburgh International will be the physical manifestation of the region's momentum, as well as how our team at the airport has evolved by continuing to accept, enhance, and drive change across the region, across the entire aviation industry, and across our internal culture. So the new terminal represents the natural extension and inclusion of the region and its metamorphosis into one of the most exciting metropolitan centers in the nation. We're leveraging the positive buzz that Pittsburgh has attracted, starting with specific steps in the current facility and taking full flight in the new terminal. So I need to take just a quick step back to take a look at what got us here and why we're here. As Rich talked about, after suffering more than a decade of losses, we faced a real crisis. Less than a quarter of the total of number of passengers that could use the facility actually did. And since our airports were built, and this is important, the industry has changed dramatically. I'm sure you've seen that, David. We all have. We have different business models, different equipment and facility needs for our passengers and our airlines. I've said it before, Rich has said it, and finally believes me, the hub is not coming back. As part of our future plans, what we're looking at when we look at this new terminal, and people ask me all the time, what if we grow? We are taking into account aggressive airline growth in this market, and we still have too much space. Period, end of sentence. Change has to occur, it can't wait. And that means we had to start with being brutally honest about the problems that existed. So let's review. We have 75 gates and 2 million square feet of space in our landside and airside terminals. They're separated by a half a mile and connected by an underground train. and that thing costs us a lot of money. We have more than 8 miles of expensive automated baggage handling conveyors built for a connecting hub airport. We have an inflexible landside building not built to handle the local passengers. If you've been there at 5:30 in the morning and you've stood in line through the garage, the doors that go to the garage, you know what I mean. We have multiple curbs on 2 levels with 17 bridges to move traffic to and from the landside terminal. We have excess ticket counter and baggage claim space with a lot of wasted energy during off-peak and slow times throughout each day. We don't have one, we have 2 separate security checkpoints that feed one terminal with no room for expansion and little flexibility for technology improvements. We have an outdated and underutilized parking garage with 1,000 covered spaces in a snowbelt. And the airfield is too big. I don't care what the Gazette says. With 4 runways and 350 operations serving 9 million annual passengers, just for comparison purposes, London Heathrow handles 4 times as many operations, 1,300 flights a day, 78 million passengers on 2 runways. But it's not all bad news. We have an airside terminal that works. It's brilliant. A state-of-the-art design 26 years ago using an innovative X shape is still being used in many terminal facilities today. Actually, the newest ones. We may have too many gates, but the airside itself works. And some of the best talent in the world, I'm sure is sitting here today, has submitted design bids in order to help us create the landside terminal that will attach to this innovative, state-of-the-art airside terminal. We've narrowed the search to 4 finalists, and I bet they're sitting here, with design work expected to begin this summer. We're also in the process of selecting a project management team. We've got 11 proposals that we're evaluating for that. And next year, we're going to start the construction work. We'll bid it out, and at some point, even if it's on December 31st, there'll be a shovel in the ground. We're going to market also, we'll go to market next year to secure bond financing, and that will be backed by airport revenues. There won't be any county taxpayer dollars in this terminal. All of these components start to fall into place, but we're not waiting. You've already started to see some changes take place airside, and more dramatic changes are going to begin soon. Some gates will be closing on the inside of those terminals, right, where we're going to build the land side, and flights and airlines will move to different locations in our concourse. This prep work is necessary before the first shovel hits the ground. Our intention is to open in early 2023. That's not long. We're already less than 5 years out. And throughout this entire process, our airline partners have been engaged and supportive, and we thank them. Our achievements in 2017 were not just recognized by Air Transport World magazine, which I talked about at this event last year when we were named Airport of the World, but we also got that award from CAPA, an international organization. And that verifies that we're capable and eager to create the new right now. The transformation of our team culture has allowed us to engage in this transformation of the facilities. We've built a strong internal culture focused on the growth of our team, who see their work as a source of pride in contributing to the future of this community. None of our recent accomplishments would have been possible without the team, some of whom are here today, and I have to ask you to stand up and be recognized because you guys do all of the work that I get to talk about. So highlights of the year, and Rich talked a little bit about it. We have doubled our flights. We're now at 74. We've got the 2 new nonstop flights to Europe and Delta increasing to a wide-body 767. We also have a new and highly valued nonstop to Seattle that Mr. Oppenheim is going to talk about. And most recently, new year-round service to Salt Lake was announced. We also have a number of regional markets that are filling in, which we're very happy about. Passenger traffic last year was up 8.2%. We just missed 9 million passengers by 12,000. It was the highest passenger number in a decade, and it's continuing to climb. As Rich noted, our numbers so far this year, January over January, February over February, are up 8.6 and 11.8 respectively. Passenger satisfaction scores are increasing, and they reached an all-time high in 2017, ranking Pittsburgh International third among airports in North America with over 2 million passengers annually. Operations at county airports are up 10%, which is a great indication of the region's healthy business climate, and we expect that to keep growing as well. We introduced new customer service and terminal amenities, becoming the first and only airport in the U.S. to offer airside access to the public through the My Pit Pass program. With direct support from the Richard King Mellon Foundation, we've installed new artwork and exhibits, such as the Earth Time exhibit, the technology of which is regularly featured at the annual World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. We also have brought on an artist in residence with a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. New concessions appearing both landside and airside in the terminals include Penn Brewery, Steel Cactus, Dunkin' Donuts, Gabbia Jewels, Buford's Grill. We've initiated a program to make the authority an employer of choice in order to retain all that talent you saw in the room. Those are folks that we want to keep, and we want to keep working and happy, and we also need to attract new talent. And our employee engagement scores are up. Qatar Airways started a dedicated cargo service using a 777 aircraft to directly connect Pittsburgh companies with global markets for importing and exporting the region's goods. And we are the only mid-sized market in the U.S. to have that honor. And thanks to our wonderful partners at Alaska Airlines, let me reiterate that today you can actually book your nonstop flight to Seattle. It starts in September, but you can actually you've been able to book it for quite some time, and we worked on that for a long time. It's an important market for us, and we really look forward to what it can do for us. It also helps us in our appeal to win the HQ2 competition, because that was a real issue for a number of the pundits who were sort of handicapping our success. It was like, well, you know, they don't have a flight to Seattle. And then we got one. So during 2017, we also commissioned an independent study of how our airports contribute to the local economy. Results were astounding. We are responsible for impacting 148,000 jobs and $29 billion in regional business revenue. That's about 10% of the region's business revenues. So much of that success we attribute to the influence and impact of our, for our regional engagement with our active community partners, many of whom are here today. And a very visible part of that cooperation comes through the collaborative work with organizations that have been with us from the beginning. Visit Pittsburgh, Craig Davis has been an amazing partner. Audrey Russo at the Allegheny Conference, Stephanie Pashman and Matt Smith now at the Allegheny Conference on Community Development, as well as folks like Mike Batisik from the Idea Foundry, and our universities, Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh, Robert Morris. We work with all of them. And just as this region is working together collaboratively and differently to set itself apart, we at the Authority are working to drive a culture of innovation at every level in the organization. And that's why we got the ATW and the CAPA awards. We didn't get them for the facilities. If you read some of the snarky comments about the terminal, they'll say, you just got Airport of the Year. Why are you going to tear it down? It wasn't because of the structure, guys. There are other airports that are a lot more impressive than ours. It was for thinking differently. It was for the turnaround. It was for the dramatic results, and for changing the team culture where everyone understands how they contribute to our success and what they're responsible for. We're fusing the region's unique brand with the total airport experience, starting with the existing space and moving emphatically and exponentially into the future with this new terminal. And at County Airport, we expect to do the same thing. Where's Patrick? We expect to do the same thing for corporate and general aviation in this community. So our many partners at the regional level in government, business, labor, universities, as well as our partner airlines, other aviation industry players, and our team share in helping make this vision real. So the result is, it's not just the state of our airport that I'm talking about. This translates into a stronger, more vibrant, and more accessible future for the entire region. Pittsburgh is getting the airports it deserves, and it's only going to get better. The state of our airports, then, is dynamic, energetic, challenging, proud, full of grit, brimming with ambitious vision, and most of all, transformational. At the start of my remarks, I asked you to think bigger, and I'm hoping that you can see that that's what I meant. And the best news of today is that we're just getting started. We're so glad that each of you will be continuing to be with us in 2018 and beyond, and I thank you for your time and attention.
So I have the privilege right now of introducing our keynote speaker, who flew in from Seattle just last night to be with us, the Vice President of Sales, David Oppenheim. David leads the carrier's efforts to expand relationships with the customers. He's also responsible for corporate and agency revenue across Alaska's network and works closely with strong teams across the country to deliver for those customers. Previously, David worked at United Airlines, where he served as managing director responsible for the carrier's global corporate and travel management efforts. He holds a bachelor's degree in both computer engineering and music from Northwestern University and an MBA from the Harvard Business School. Please join me in welcoming David Oppenheim.
Well, thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm just thrilled to be here, and even more excited after hearing everything that Christina had to say. So, Christina, thank you for having us and all your support in getting this service started. We are thrilled to be entering Pittsburgh. We'd love to be here even sooner. I would have loved it if I didn't have to make a connection last night and again tomorrow. But sometimes you need new planes, and it takes a little while to build them. So we're going to have some new planes coming this year, and one of those is going to be flying between Seattle and Pittsburgh, and we are thrilled. I actually have some extended family here in Pittsburgh, and it's a wonderful city. And seeing the reinvention of the city and what's gone along with it in the airport is really inspiring, and it's a big part of why this is our next big destination. So this is a new route for us. This is going to be nonstop flights. There's just such a strong technology connection between what has developed in Pittsburgh over the past 10 or 20 years and what has really developed also in Seattle over the past 10 or 20 years. Both were heavy industrial cities that now have thriving tech communities. And so being able to connect them and create that efficiency for both is huge. Let me tell you why we're so excited about Pittsburgh. Obviously, there's that tech and industrial connection that has existed for some time. But this is one of the most livable cities in the country. This is a place that West Coast companies are looking to add resources, to add places that are affordable and has a strong tech community. Seattle, as somebody who just recently moved there and is in the process of buying a house, is not an affordable city. Though for folks in San Francisco it is, but for the rest of us it's not. And so the same reason that Pittsburgh is a finalist for HQ2 from Amazon is the same reason that we look at this and say this is a place that has the business climate and the community that is growing and is going to be really relevant. And so that's why we're really excited to inaugurate service here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Alaska Airlines, but my hope is that Seattle, Pittsburgh is the first of many places we can serve from here. We have a very strong presence all along the West Coast to a lot of major cities, and we want to see this route get off to a great start and then expand from there. So let me tell you a little bit about Alaska. I'm new to Alaska Airlines, as was just introduced, and there's something about it that is a little hard to describe and to get my hands on. When I was interviewing, it really felt different. I was a consultant before I was at another airline, and so I've worked with quite a few airlines. And there's differences between every company, but when I went through this interview process and I spoke to a bunch of folks who were both here or had been at Alaska, it seemed different. It felt like a small company, but when you look at the route map, particularly when you're looking at the West Coast, it's a very large airline. We're the 5th largest airline in the country. And it didn't feel like that with all the folks I met. And I went home and I talked to my family and my friends and all these things, and I said, it seems like too good to be true. They can't actually act like a small company if they run 1,200 flights a day and they've got 22,000 employees. And I said, well, it seems like a great place, and I think I'm going to go there. But we'll see. You never really know, because when you're interviewing, everybody can tell you nice stuff. And I've been there now several months, and it is really true. It does feel like a small company. It does feel like you can make change and get things done. And it feels very different than all the other airlines that I've worked closely with. So I'm thrilled to be here. It's not as well known right here, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the airline. The history dates back to 1932. It ended up consolidating a number of small airlines in Alaska. Obviously, the name, that's our heritage. That's an interesting set of conditions to fly in. The winters here won't look so bad in comparison. But important to realize that we have historically been a pretty small airline. At the time of deregulation in 1979, Alaska had 10 planes, and we served one city outside of the state of Alaska. So that wasn't that long ago. It was the last time the Pirates won the World Series, but but as someone with loyalty to a team who's usually quite good, I wish we had the Pirates record so far this year. But the airline got into a mode of growth, and it went through the ups and downs that every business in this industry has gone through. But in the 90s, really transformed, and the motto at the time was, for the same price, you just get more. And while that's not our motto today, it really is part of the value proposition of what we offer. It is a premium level of service at a low price. We're a really low-cost airline, but it doesn't feel like it when you fly. And that's just who we are. And there's such a commitment universally from the flight attendants to the gate agents to the folks down on the ramp loading bags, all the way up to our CEO, that is who we're going to be. We're going to be low cost, we're going to be efficient, and we're going to provide a better level of service than you're used to. In the 2000s, we really expanded again and worked our way into Hawaii, down into Mexico, became an international carrier. If you go way back, we were an international carrier to Russia, because it was pretty close, but we were a domestic carrier for many decades and have now expanded again throughout North America to Canada, to Mexico, to Costa Rica. And we now have 118 destinations in 5 different countries. And we serve 33 million passengers a year. So as I said, it's the 5th largest airline in the country, but here in Pittsburgh, we haven't been here yet. And so we got to get introduced, and we're really excited about that. But the biggest change, perhaps in our history, actually happened about 1.5 years ago, and that was when we announced that we were merging with Virgin America. And so Virgin America was obviously a much younger, newer airline, but had a tremendous just love by its customers. People loved flying on Virgin, and one of the most valuable things that we took from Virgin and brought throughout the Alaska network is this motto, creating an airline that people love. And that's been great, because they were an airline that when you talk to people, they said, oh, I love flying Virgin. I worked at other airlines. You don't always have customers come up to you and say, oh, what do you do? I work at this airline. Oh, I love that airline. It's just not, this business, that's not the life you get to live when you go tell people what you do. But here at Alaska, and for the folks that were coming over from Virgin, that was what we heard. And people really did love the airlines. And so that's been a very welcome change when I get out in public. We're nearly done with the integration. The merger closed last year. And in 21 days from today, the Virgin brand is actually going to go away. Everything will be branded Alaska. There'll be one website, one brand. You'll walk up to the counter. There won't be 2 different counters. And all the flights will be Alaska. So we're really excited for that. It's a very big transition, because for the consumer, everything becomes Alaska. And the great thing about this, when we put those 2 networks together, is Alaska obviously has this history in the state of Alaska and had a really strong presence in the Pacific Northwest. But Virgin was strong throughout California, with a really strong presence in San Francisco and a little less so in Los Angeles. We had presence in those cities, but we weren't really big. Once you put them together, we're the largest airline on the West Coast, and that's a really exciting thing. It means that if you're in Hawaii, we have more flights to more destinations on the West Coast than anybody else. When you're looking at the East Coast and going transcon from anywhere on the East Coast to anywhere on the West Coast, we're going to be one of the largest carriers offering that service. And so we become a lot more relevant, and that lets us do more than connect people on the West Coast. It lets us come into cities like Pittsburgh and bring people both to Seattle and beyond. And that's really exciting. So our view of this is, obviously these are 2 great cities with actually a lot of commonalities in our history, But the exciting thing is that we can take you to Hawaii, we can take you to all points throughout the West Coast, we can take you up to Alaska. There's a lot of places that we can go. And so this is just the beginning. We're a high growth airline, and that's been an exciting thing to join a new team. It can be a little harder when you're not growing as a business. And you know, when you actually get out to Seattle, we have 90 different destinations. Let me tell you a little bit about the product, because I think it's going to be really exciting. And Pittsburgh, Seattle is not a short flight, even when you're going nonstop, and certainly when you're connecting. So a few things that we do that are different. We have free in-flight texting for everyone on the plane. So you get on, you can connect to the Wi-Fi, and you can actually send short messages without paying. We also have a great Wi-Fi service that we're in the process of upgrading to be all satellite, which gets you really fast connections, so you don't have that, you know, oh, it's great, I can send an email from the sky, I just have to wait half an hour for it to get out. We have free in-flight movies on your own devices, and we also have devices for people. And we have a product called Premium Class, which is sort of our premium economy. It's an extra legroom product, but unlike other airlines, it's not just extra legroom. There's also snacks and free drinks that are part of that, and early boarding. So it's a real premium product available for a good chunk of the folks that aren't in first class. And something else that I love, I've been in the process of moving, and so I've had more checked bags than I'm used to on my business trips. We have a 20-minute baggage guarantee. From the time the door opens, the bags will be on the belt within 20 minutes, and if not, we'll compensate you. And as somebody who's spent more of my life than I'd like to standing at baggage claim waiting for bags, that can make a real difference. And then, you know, a last point about Alaska that often isn't that well known. We're not in any of the 3 major airline alliances. However, we have an incredible network of airline partners. You know, right here we have Condor, who's servicing Europe from here, but also British Airways, Emirates, Cathay Pacific, Singapore, really premier airlines around the world that are connected into this network. So when you go fly this Alaska flight, as I'm sure all of you will, to Seattle starting in September, and you start earning those Alaska mileage plan miles, you're going to be able to take those and go anywhere in the world, on great carriers. And if you then are flying internationally, but you go to Seattle a lot, you can earn your mileage plan miles on any of those carriers. So it's a real partnership network. Despite being a little bit smaller, a little more focused on the West Coast, we really do have that global footprint with our set of partners. So I mentioned earlier that we are creating an airline people love, and there's something very deliberate about that wording. The creating isn't ever done. We're always working to improve what we do and how we do it. And that culture, as I said, extends throughout everyone at the company. And Pittsburgh is just the next stop for us. It's the next place that we're going to bring service, bring that Alaska experience, and we're just thrilled to be here. So thank you to everyone who came out this morning. I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to be meeting with some members of the community over the next couple of days, and we're really excited to be back here in September nonstop. So thank you, everybody.
Wow, great remarks. How about another round of applause for Rich, Christina, and David? So now we're going to open it up to questions. I know many of you, and you ask me questions daily, so hopefully you have them at the ready for our 3 panelists here. If you want to, you could direct your question to any one of the 3 or keep it general. We do have Allegheny County Airport Authority employees walking around. I'd ask you to kindly wait till the microphone's by you so we could all hear. So the Q&A will be opened up, and please don't be shy.
Nobody ever has questions about the airport, ever.
I'll direct if I see a hand go up, or, okay, there's one in the middle here. Jonathan.
So, thank you. Right behind me, I got a microphone and everything. This is fantastic. So the tech community is really excited about this flight to Seattle and access to the West Coast, and we want more. So, no pressure, but we just wanted to kind of pick your brain. What would it take to get more flights? Obviously, people on planes, but what else could we be doing to get more access to the West Coast?
Well, we had good news. No one's even announced it, but the fact that we've expanded San Francisco. Christina announced just this week that San Francisco United is going to be adding more service to San Francisco. And Audrey never asks for more service
Never.
She never does.
I'm gonna give this to our airline partner because I know we're doing everything we can to make that possible.
So lucky for you, you got the sales guy rather than the network guy, who's always going to be a little more cautious. Look, the first thing is, if this route does well, we'll be looking to do more. I don't know if that'll mean additional frequencies or that'll mean additional cities, but as a city does well, we want to do more there. And when you try new routes, they don't always work. This is one of those ones, looking at this community and looking at all the numbers of how people are flying today, we have a lot of confidence in. This isn't a roll of the dice. This is something we feel really good about. And if it performs really well, we'll look to do more. The good news is Alaska's an airline that's growing and growing rapidly. And so as we have the capacity, we'll look for other places to add. And there is another airline servicing San Francisco, but with the inclusion of the Virgin Network, we have a very big presence there. And so that's our second largest station that we work out of, and certainly another place we think about connectivity.
Great. How about some more questions out there in the audience? So some hands go up. I could do a soft shoe and a song if you'd like, but we have some questions. I see a hand over there. Yes, please.
David, welcome to Pittsburgh. Since you have a computer engineering background and worked for BCG, I'm just curious from a technology perspective, where do you see airports and airlines going in terms of using sensors and data analytics? Just curious about what your impressions are.
Oh, no, that's a great question. Yeah, I sometimes scare our IT guys when I'm asking about commercial projects, and then and I describe how I would build it, and they go, "What? I thought you were a sales guy." Yeah, look, there was a saying a few years ago by someone I used to work with that this is really just a technology company with wings. At another airline I was at, and there's some truth to that. The industry has been really transformed by technology. I was in a meeting just this week on a floor that's now filled with developers that was where we used to have clerks counting all the paper tickets, because every time you flew, the paper ticket was actually handed in and then it got flown back to a central office for all of our accounting. And we didn't know how much we had sold or how many people had flew until someone counted those pieces of paper. That wasn't actually that long ago. That was much more recent in our industry than in many others. And that continues to change. I think when we think about the airline we're going to be in the future and what the airport of the future looks like, technology is a huge part of that. The mobile app, the rise of mobile has already transformed your travel experience, mostly on the day of travel, but somewhat in the booking process as well. I fly. I haven't had a paper boarding pass in quite some time. 10 years ago, I only had paper boarding passes. And so that's been at least in the timeline of how things move in a safety-obsessed large industry like airlines, that's been a pretty rapid transformation. And certainly the rise of sensors, it will change what we do. You see airlines already experimenting with self-boarding, right? Where you just basically come to a kiosk. You don't have somebody checking who each person is and handling your boarding pass getting on the plane. So that's really exciting for us. And when we look at the transformation that's coming here in this city with this terminal, I'm thrilled because it's going to massively improve the customer experience. And so we're glad that we're going to be a part of that as it develops.
Yeah, I just want to add that from an airport perspective, I mean, what the airport of the future will look like is what we're building, because what we'll be able to do in that airport terminal, the new one, is accommodate any technology that's coming that we can't even imagine today, right? Because what we know is we're already wrong. What's going to happen in 5 years is what none of us are thinking about. So with the terminal design of this big box loose fit, we'll be able to move things around inside like we cannot do today. So as David was talking about, he doesn't use a paper ticket. That means he's not going to the check-in desk, right? You're not checking, and you're probably not checking a bag 9 times out of 10 unless you're moving. So that means you don't need almost our entire 3rd floor. It's useless to a whole lot of passengers, and we cannot reprogram that space. So by having this new terminal with 1 floor that everything is available on, and the ability to move things around on the inside as biometrics come into play, as more and more data becomes available about traffic flow and patterns, we'll be able to curate the space to fit the needs of the market, and that's where the industry should be going. And we actually have an opportunity to build that.
I'll also add, as technology changes, the parking garage. We having become an O&D airport over the last few years, we've gone from 4 million O&D passengers up to 9 and heading towards 10. The parking garage and the parking lots are full. We're going to build a parking garage with the new addition to the airport, but what's going to happen 5 years from now when rideshare has really taken over and people don't own cars? They own an app. Maybe Sherry can tell us how that's going to work. But if we build a parking garage for today, will it be vacant 5 or 10 years from now, or can it be converted to some other use of space for development or office space or whatever it might be? So the planners really have to think about, as Christina said, things we can't even imagine are going to be in place 5 years from now that never existed when this airport was built.
Great. How about some more questions for our panel?
First off, thanks for everybody, and kudos for the transformation that's happened at the airport. And Christina, I really appreciate your comment about the airport being the brand of Pittsburgh. It is the first thing that visitors see, and it's the last thing that visitors do. So all about that experience is really important. And great work on going from 37 flights to 74 flights. But where are some of the new destinations we have in mind, and how are we going to get there?
To nobody in particular, I would say that we're looking at more. West Coast has been a pain point since day one. So when Rich got into office, he heard that the airport needed to be fixed. When I came here, I heard West Coast, West Coast, West Coast. My first talk was to the Tech Council. Thank you for hosting me, Audrey. And I was followed out to the car by a couple of people who said, "Let me tell you why this matters." And believe me, it had a huge impact on me. So. We would like to see, 2-3 times a day to the Bay Area. We would like to see San Diego. We'd like to see LA shored up. And certainly we want to make sure that Seattle is incredibly successful. We are looking into Europe, into London and or Dublin, looking for more nonstop service to London is our biggest market. It's unserved, and we think that there's a real opportunity for that to be successful. We are looking to Latin America to see if there's a hub that makes sense there to sort of collect traffic and move it down into the continent. We look long-term into Asia and the Gulf because the Indian market is growing so rapidly, and that is best served through the 3 points in the Middle East, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Qatar. And at some point, those guys, with all their money and all their airplanes, are going to fly into medium-sized markets in the U.S., and we'd like to be the first one. That may be 4 or 5 years out. China may be 4 or 5 years out. But we're paying attention to all of that. We have a lot to do still in the U.S. on a frequency and an aircraft gauge. From that perspective, we want to make sure we have the right frequency in the markets. Our DC market is poorly served to national, and we deserve better, and we want to make sure that that can happen. But again, that takes time, and we want to make sure that we can maintain the service to the regional markets that OneJet has built up. That's really important, and I have said to people before that it's as important to get to Indianapolis nonstop as it is Seattle or London or Frankfurt. So if you're doing business in a medium-sized market that the major carriers have dropped because of their hub strategy, you care about being able to get there nonstop, and we want to see those markets continue to succeed. So that's just a little bit of what we're looking at.
And Congressman Lamb, you're not even in office, and she's adding flights to Washington. So see how the impact that you've had in Philadelphia too. We hear about Philadelphia, more frequent operations there. But as Christina has said, not just the new cities, it's increasing to the existing cities. Boston and Chicago have both had enhancements and a lot more flights that have made it much better for the business traveler, as has Hartford and some other cities in the U.S. as well.
I think we got a question over here.
What can the corporate community in Pittsburgh do to support the growth of the airport?
Well, I think working with Vince, government relations and corporate relations, and Christina, I think the partnership has been pretty good. But obviously, when we get a new city, when we get a new flight, whether it's to Seattle or wherever, that it is supported, that the direct flights are supported, so that when Christina goes and sells to an airline and says, we will support this market, whatever that market will be, that the community does then follow up and do that. So that the communication between the airport and the corporate community is very vital. It's very important. That's why Matt Smith, president of the Chamber of Commerce, is on the board. He brings that connection back and forth between the business community and the airport authority. So I think those type of things in our universities, I mean, all these partners that we have been tremendous. Craig and his team, Audrey and her team, we all work together, but I think we just got to keep the communication going so that we do support those flights. I will also say that the Qatar cargo is also that our manufacturers are able to use with the freight forwarders that service. Because as Christina said, we're the only mid-sized city that got something like that. Yeah, New York has it, and Chicago and LA and the big cities, but for Pittsburgh to get that, it was a really, really big deal, and it's going to help make our manufacturers more competitive. And as the Shell petrochemical plant comes online and more manufacturing comes about, that synergy is really important.
I want to start by saying thank you to the corporate community. Like David, I spent a lot of years consulting to airports around the world in the areas of competitiveness, how to get airports to be better at attracting new service, the service that they need for their communities. And the reason I took this job is because during my second interview, after I met with Rich and his chief of staff, Jen Liptak, I was driven around to corporate CEOs in this community because they cared so much about who got hired and what was going to happen to the airport and what could happen with the airport. And that's when I thought, I can work here, because this is a corporate community that shows up. When we have questions, they answer them. When we send out surveys, we get responses. I mean, like way higher than anybody would expect in terms of percentage returned. So what I would say is, please continue to communicate with us. Follow us out into the garage and tell us the stories. They really do matter. And that's, you know, at the end of the day, when we go talk to an airline, people think it's easy. You know, there's been some comments, well, you know, you just, if this community grows, then the air service will come. Well, I got news for you. They tried that for 10 years, and what happened? Yeah, nothing. So it doesn't work that way. The way that it works is you go out and you aggressively sell. We are marketing this community, and we don't market the airport. We don't talk about 4 runways and 75 gates and how great it is to get Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks in the same terminal. What we talk about is what's happening in the business community, and we talk about the story behind the numbers, because we're looking at the same data. He's got the data that I've got. And if it were that easy, then every airline would just go down the list. Okay, these are the biggest markets, let's pick this one next. But it has everything to do with how does the market fit into the airline strategy? What is the network growth strategy, and where do we fit in it? That's the story we tell. So as we have more information about what's coming in the corporate community, where the pain points are, then we can further refine our strategy and know that when we bring in an airline that we have invested in bringing in, deliberately made a choice to put money to bring in, that it will be successful way beyond that initial investment. Because they're not coming for a subsidy or an incentive or any kind of marketing dollars. It costs way more to fly that flight than we give them, okay? It's a big risk for them, and this is our way of showing that we've got skin in the game, and we care about it.
And let me give you one example of that. A new airline, they're not so new anymore, called OneJet. A couple of years ago when they were starting up, a young guy who'd been in the industry decided to start with 7-seater jets that could fit to small markets. And places like Indianapolis and Memphis and Milwaukee were all fighting over where they would base their operation. Christina called on, at the time, Dennis Jablonski, the head of the conference, and myself, and we went to New York and we met with them and we made a pitch. And we got our corporate community to really step up. Thomas Tull and Jim Rohr stepped up and were part of a team that got them away from those other cities that were there. We now have 12 flights, 12 cities that we service, like Kansas City, like Hartford, like Memphis, Indianapolis, Milwaukee, that had no service, but that was where the corporate community, with the conference stepping up and getting their partners to not only step up with some investment, but also to say, we're going to use the flight. We'll book the tickets. We'll buy the tickets to the flight. And they have been doing gangbusters ever since. And they're glad they're here. and there are jobs that are here because the flight crew is here, the maintenance people are here, the booking agents are here. Those jobs are here in Pittsburgh.
Great. Any further questions?
We have one over here.
Okay.
Hi, how are you guys today? I had a quick question. Do you ever think about adding a rail connection out to the airport to add some extra connectivity into the city?
Well, that's not what Christina gets. I mean, we don't have the Port Authority director here, but there's a movement, as you see right now, at the federal level. You know, what are we going to do about infrastructure as a community? I'd love to get rail. We now obviously have the 28X, and we have some connections, but could it be better? Yes. And could we improve upon it? Yes. Technology is also changing the way ground transportation is going with driverless vehicles. You're sitting there with one of the leaders in that at your table. And you know, making connections easier to get to the airport is important. We're obviously talking about a multi-billion-dollar investment for something along those lines, and we would certainly need a lot of help. No hint there, Congressman Lamb will be coming to your office for that anytime soon.
I just want to say that we are leaving a right-of-way in the new terminal for that, so that we're not going to preclude any future opportunities should they become available. That said, Catherine Egan Kellerman, who is the new head of the Port Authority, and I have met. She's fantastic. She cares about buses like I care about planes. I didn't know those people existed, but he found her, so well done. And we are looking for any and all opportunities to improve ground access to the airport. By law, we are not allowed to pay for it. So if people say, why can't you take that $1 billion and just build a rail connection? Because the FAA won't let us. So the best we can do is pay for anything that hits our property. And if that ever becomes available, we'll be ready. And up until that, I think Catherine has some incredibly innovative and forward-thinking ideas, short-term and long-term, for what we can do in the meantime. So I appreciate her partnership, and what's possible with the Port Authority, because I think we have a great person leading that organization.
Great. Time for one more, if there's any. Okay. Well, we thank you for your questions, and I will ask Christina to come up for one more thing before we close.
Okay, we actually have a small gift that we wanted to give to David, so come on up. This is really beautifully wrapped in this nice plastic bag, so just a memento of Pittsburgh, and to thank you for your time and coming out here. Okay, thank you, everybody.
And that will conclude our program. Thank you for coming.